I like to say that the bow of the boat's the most honest place in the world. You can talk yourself up and be the best angler in the world, but it's all going to show when you get on the bow of that boat.
Well, Captain Conner Bryant, thanks for coming on the Rivers and Tides podcast, where we bring guests on to talk about healing and resiliency through spending time in the outdoors and some outdoor pursuits. Before we get going too far, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yep. Thank you for the invite. I'm happy to be here. Captain Conner Bryant. Carolina native, full-time skiff guide here, Charleston, South Carolina. Spent some time in the Coast Guard, law enforcement after that, and now I'm back in the motherland.
Back in Charleston. When did you get back to Charleston? When did you move to Charleston?
We moved back in what was it? A few years ago now. I don't even... What year is it now? 24?
Yeah.
Like 4 or 5 years ago.
That's right. Half the time I don't even know how old I am. So.
Yeah, me either. Yeah, I start counting with my toes.
I think you stop counting after 30, which for me was a while ago. But where did you grow up? Where were you born?
So I was born in Wilmington, North Carolina, which is kind of the North Carolina equivalent to Charleston, Port City, real historic, a lot of marsh, rivers. And when I was 10, we moved to the Myrtle Beach area. I grew up in North Myrtle Beach. And then I left when I was 21, and that's when I joined the Coast Guard.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Wilmington and Myrtle Beach, not for any good reasons like you growing up there, but when I was in the Marines and based out of Jacksonville, North Carolina, when we wanted to go enjoy our weekends, we would make our way down to Wilmington, and if we really wanted to enjoy our weekends, we'd make our way down to Myrtle Beach. So it was quite the party spot. I'm sure it's 10 times that now with so many people moving there.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah,
it's become quite the popular spot to be.
It doubles every time I go back.
You'd think they'd run out of places to build houses, but I don't know how they'd continue to do it. But it's just like they are here in Charleston, I guess.
Yeah, very true.
So, what was it like growing up in Myrtle Beach? Seems like it'd be a pretty fun place to be a kid and grow up.
It was a lot of fun. The group of friends I had, we were all very outdoorsy people. We were all not inside kids at all. So we were always hunting, fishing, surfing. This was the time before cell phones. So, you left the house in the morning and we could take a boat, put a boat in the Intercoastal Waterway and take it out beachside and get back. And, our parents had no idea where we were as long as we were back home before the street lights came on.
Totally different time. I mean, that's how it was when I was a kid. My mom and, I'd say goodbye in the morning and be home by sunset was kind of like, the thing. I couldn't imagine that now, even with my own kids. Like, yeah. I'd lose my mind. Like, where are they? They must be dead, kidnapped in a ditch somewhere. So what was, in high school, did you fish and surf and hunt in high school?
Yeah.
Is that when you started?
So I started young, probably 10. But, yeah, when I was in high school, especially after I got a driver's license, it was hard to go to school at that point, depending on what was in season at the time. And the group of friends I had were not, they were the same way, too. So it's, I really need to be in class today. But man, the flounder bite's going to really be on. Well, I can get notes. And I have a few more days I can miss this year before I have to repeat my grade.
Let's go fishing.
Exactly. So,
did you start fly fishing back then?
My grandpa taught me how to fly fish when I was 10, and I got hooked on it ever since. No pun intended. I used to stay with them in Raleigh, North Carolina at the time, and they had a pond in their backyard. And so I would just I'd stay for a week or two in the summer, and I'd fish every day, all day. I'd come in to get a bologna sandwich, and then I was right back at that pond.
I don't know if anyone eats bologna anymore. I used to eat bologna and cheese and on Wonder Bread or whatever. But yeah.
Oh, yeah. If it's not sticking to the roof of your mouth, it's not good.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So what kind of fish was the pond stocked with?
Largemouth bass, brim. So, and then there was some catfish.
Did you catch them on the surface, or was it?
I did a lot of those little Walmart cork popper fishing, and at that time in the Carolinas, saltwater fly fishing was just something you really didn't hear people doing. If you talked about saltwater fly fishing, that was something people did down in the Keys, or you watched it on TV. And it wasn't until I was probably in high school was when you started seeing some of the fly shop or tackle shops selling saltwater flies, and you'd start seeing boats with some fly rods in them, and that's when it was kind of like, people catch these redfish on flies, because you're growing up, redfish, you caught them, they were fun to catch, but it was kind of like a bycatch to catch flounder or speckled trout.
Now it's like the target species for, at least that's what it's Charleston's known for, or why people most of the time charter you is to go catch redfish, right?
Yeah, the word has gotten out about redfish now.
Yeah, it's a fun fish to catch. I mean, it's a great fish to chase with a fly rod.
Absolutely.
So after high school, or during high school, I should say, it doesn't sound like myself, you were necessarily the most studious, academically focused person in high school.
Yep. I was the child that was C's got degrees kind of guy. And I was lucky enough to just always sit next to somebody that was smart and was really bad about hiding the answers to their tests. Otherwise, I'd probably still be in high school.
Yeah, I think the only reason I graduated high school is they just wanted to get me out of there.
Yeah,
because I don't think my grades necessarily were there. So after high school, what'd you do then?
I went to local community college. I went to forestry business management. Again, at the time, I knew I liked hunting and I knew I liked fishing, and that was pretty much the only thing I knew I really loved to do. I grew up on boats, and I didn't really think there was a good way to make a career in fishing. I started working on an offshore charter boat when I was 13, so I was around it for a while, and I saw how a lot of those guys were during the winter time, where it got really, really slow. And I wanted it kind of more solid income year round. I say that as a fishing guide now. So I went to forestry school, and it taught me that I really hate being in the woods when it's hot. Snakes, spiders, chiggers, I'm not a fan of them.
Nope, me neither.
So I was just mature enough to know that I was too immature for that. And that's when I decided to join the Coast Guard and hopefully kind of figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I enlisted in the Coast Guard. The process was pretty quick, especially at the time. They weren't really taking many people. I got really lucky. I went up to Cape May, New Jersey, and did boot camp there. I got sick, so I ended up spending a little bit longer. I should have been 8 weeks. I spent 10 weeks.
What was your exposure? Sorry, what was your exposure to the Coast Guard? Like, how did you get interested in the Coast Guard?
So being born, and we still had family and stuff in Wilmington. Wilmington's a pretty big Coast Guard town.
Okay, so you were just around them kind of growing up.
Yep, and the downtown, they had a big cutter there for a while. And then also just growing up on the water, we'd see them around Myrtle Beach, coming down here to Charleston. So, I was always around them, and it was something that I was always interested in the military as well. So it was kind of, when I was wanting to figure out what I wanted to do, I thought it was a good fit at the time.
Yeah, your experience is pretty, very similar to mine in that high school for me was definitely not academic focused, more of social focused on, hanging out with friends and making plans to then hang out with friends, cutting school and doing other things like going to the beach. And then, yeah, same thing. I mean, it's just like we were kind of talking about earlier, is not being able to have that structure, to put that structure in place ourselves to get, focused on any one thing and like accomplish tasks without. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of like the same thing with me as far as the military and like joining them. And I think that's one of the things we were talking about earlier also, is that, boot camp in the military isn't that difficult from a physical standpoint. It's more mental, and that being pushed mentally and realizing that you can accomplish things and overcome things, that's really starts to put those abilities in place and to stay focused on a task and accomplish something and start and finish something. And so, yeah, I mean, I definitely needed that out of high school for sure. I was not, if I would have went straight to college, I certainly would have not done well.
Yeah. And, looking back, there's a lot of things that I say, I'd like to change, but one thing would definitely be I would not change joining when I did and spending my time in there. And I needed that kick in the ass of
I definitely
going down the right path.
Yeah, it's definitely something I wouldn't change because it's, I needed that focus. I needed that kick in the ass, like you said.
Yep.
That time to pull my head out of my ass, as I always say. Yeah. So in the Coast, after boot camp, what'd you do after that?
So I was a victim of a recruiter. So I joined the Coast Guard because I wanted to do law enforcement. I wanted to be like the cool recruiting ads. So the recruiters, and at the time I was dating, she's now my wife, but we had just started dating. So I'd said, I really want to do law enforcement, but I want to do it somewhere close. I'd like to go to Charleston. And of course, a recruiter, oh yeah, absolutely. Sign right here, we'll get you here. And
whatever you want to do, son.
Yep, exactly.
You want to be part of those sexy tactical boarding teams? Yeah, no problem.
Here's a take-home vehicle, everything. Yeah. But so my first unit it's the only unit in the Coast Guard that doesn't do law enforcement. It's an aids and navigation team. So we did a lot of working on lighthouses, range lights, foam buoys, which at the time I was really unhappy with. I felt like I wanted to do more, but looking back, I learned a tremendous amount from that, even, stuff that I apply as a captain today. The hours were awesome. And so that was a great gig. I did that until I got qualified and my name came up to go to my specialty school or like my job school. And I chose bosun mate, which is one of the kind of backbone rates of the Coast Guard. So it's like the multi-tool. So we're trained to drive boats. When
they need something to be done, get a bosun's mate.
Yeah, but boat can't move without a bosun mate. And it's a command rate, so you learn a lot about you learn the leadership side of stuff too, because most Coast Guard stations are ran by bosun mates, not officers, which is interesting. And a lot of the smaller cutters are also ran by bosun mates, not officers. Mm-hmm. So I was, again, I still didn't know what I wanted to do, and I thought that I was going to get the most exposure to a lot of different things that the Coast Guard does, being a bosun mate, and I did. So,
how long had you been in at this point?
Probably a year and a half at that time. So I went to Yorktown, Virginia. Bosun mate school is, I want to say it's 14 weeks, and you learn a lot. You learn a lot about boat driving, water. I mean, imagine a 14-week captain's course. It's really, really in depth. And then I went to Portsmouth, Virginia, to a small boat station where we did a lot of the law enforcement and the search into the more romantic stuff that the Coast Guard,
the sexy
has.
stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And then I learned that it's not that much fun, and I wanted to go back to an aids and navigation team, but it was awesome. That job was the scheduling and stuff on it. It's kind of firefighter schedule, so 2 on 2 off sliding weekends.
It never kind of works out the way the recruiter tells you it does, or the way they put it out there on the posters and
it's weird how that happens,
and the movies and the TV shows.
Yeah, it's weird how that reputation really holds strong. But we did a lot of training with foreign Coast Guards and navies. We did the Hampton Roads is a big port, so we got a lot of the tactical qualifications and all the fun stuff, and that opened up a lot of doors for me in the future.
Were you still fishing at the time? Did you fish throughout all this?
Oh yeah,
fly fishing. Is that when you started? Did you start saltwater fly fishing at that point in that time frame?
So I started saltwater fly fishing early on in high school. About the time I kind of was starting to piece it together, seeing fly rods in people's boats around town, and then seeing some saltwater flies in stores, and I was starting to piece it together. By the time I graduated high school, I was actively saltwater fly fishing, and the only fly fishing I think I didn't do was just a short period of time that I was in Philadelphia.
I say, having moved here a little over a year ago from out west and never saltwater fly fished, I like to the way I see saltwater fly fishing is a niche, and saltwater fly fishing is a niche within a niche. It seems like a lot of people do it, but it's actually not. When you look at it from a big picture standpoint, it's a pretty niche thing.
Yeah, it is.
And like we were talking a little earlier, the cast is more complicated. It's hard. It's not an easy thing to do. I will say, and I'll catch flack for this, trout fishing is easier than saltwater fly fishing. It just is. It just is. The cast is harder, and finding the fish is harder. And, if you don't have a boat, it's a lot harder. You really need a boat to get around. But how long did you end up staying in the Coast Guard for?
I did 5 years total, active duty. And then I got out, switched over to active reserves.
Were you in Virginia that whole time?
Yeah. After that, I completed my enlistment in Virginia. About the time I got out of the Coast Guard, we were planning on coming back to Carolina. My wife got into school up there, so we got stuck for an additional 4 years. So I switched over to active reserves and, played Coast Guard once a month and 2 weeks out of the year to where I could still keep the TRICARE, in case I ever needed it.
It's important to have.
Yep. And again, I always wanted to have that fallback in case I did want to go back active duty, because I was still enjoying it. And so I got into contracting. So I did 2 years working for a contract company where we trained different branches of the military with vessel boardings, vessel on vessel, counter piracy.
That's cool. There's a lot of that down here. I see a lot of training jobs, because I know the Coast Guard trains at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center down here and some other areas around here, but I see a lot of contract jobs to instruct Coast Guard on that same stuff around here.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun. That particular company, you really weren't making money unless you were traveling,
making per diem and stuff.
Yeah, and so the money was great when I was gone, but at that time I was married at that time.
Problem is you're gone.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a great job for you if you're single or anything like that. But having a wife, and she was in full-time student, so she needed help around the house when she could get it, and so I switched over and I got hired on with the state, and I did marine conservation law enforcement.
And this is in Virginia?
Also in Virginia.
Okay.
Yep.
How was that? Did you have to go through training for that, or did you kind of just lateral over?
Yep. So I had to go through a police academy. So I was, as essentially a saltwater game warden, I was going through with local police departments and learning vehicle accident investigations.
Sounds fun. I mean,
yeah, some of it was really fun, and I used it a lot, but a lot of the other stuff,
not so much.
Yeah. But at least I know, when a form's filled out wrong, if I ever got in an accident or something.
How did you know when you wanted to become a fishing guide?
So the group of friends I had growing up, they've all kind of went into doing the exact same thing, and they started inshore guide services. And I kind of thought they were nuts at the time, because I didn't think that people were going to pay money to come to the Carolinas and catch redfish and flounder and stuff. And, whenever they had told me that's what they were doing, it's kind of like, good luck.
And were they doing it fly fishing?
No, just in the area of Myrtle Beach at that time. Even now, fly fishing in that area, there's not a ton of marsh to be able to hide in, and they don't get the floods and stuff. You're seeing it more in Georgetown area and stuff, but those guys are all in Little River. But so no, it was a lot of bait stuff, bait and artificial. And so getting out of the Coast Guard, I had all this skill set of driving boats, but the Coast Guard, kind of looks at it as, you can drive our boats, but you still are going to have to pay us to go back through a captain's course to get your captain's license. And I knew I wanted to do something on the water, and the contract company at that time was asking certain boats for you to have a captain's license to operate. So I went ahead and got my captain's license, but the spark of starting and doing this as a living didn't really hit me until I was doing the fishery stuff for the state, seeing these guys coming in, having a blast, knowing that they're making
getting paid to go out.
Yeah, my 2 week salary and a day, and everybody's having a great time. And that's, my buddies back home, they were doing the exact same thing. They were loving it. They were their own bosses. So whenever we found out that we were able to come back to Carolina, that's when I decided, okay, well, this is what I want to do now that, I'm leaving Virginia. I'm starting fresh. I know the water. I have a connection with it here. So I helped a buddy out that was one of the ones that had started when I left, and kind of just got a taste, which was more of bay boat style fishing. Even that was a blast. And when we came settled in here on Johns Island, that's when it was, all right, well, I want to focus more on fly fishing. The spin stuff's fun, but the fly fishing's the real fun stuff.
Yeah, I always say, coming from out west, fly fishing is a niche within the fishing industry. Mm-hmm. And then, saltwater fly fishing is kind of a niche within that niche. I mean, it's really, when you look at the fishing industry as a whole, or fishing, even here, I mean, people that are out fishing, the fly fishing piece of it is a pretty small piece, but it's enough to keep you booked on a fairly regular basis.
Yep. It's just enough to barely pay my bills now. So,
life as a fishing guide, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. The glorious fishing guide.
So how long have you been a guide here for in Charleston?
So this will be owning my own business. This will be my 4th summer.
And have you seen an increase in the number of people looking for fly fishing charters, or just charters in general to fish inshore here?
I have. Yep. So I fish a lot of my repeats now. I think, the hard part with guiding is definitely, learning the water and stuff, but, you're building a clientele. You can't make money fishing without a client.
Yeah.
And so advertising is by far the most expensive part. And so being able to have repeats has been huge for me. And it's a big honor too, that somebody spent the money to fish with me and they had such a good time that they want to do it again.
It seems like, these days, as a guide, social media is a big part of it.
It's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
Yep. There's some people out there that are really good at the social media game. And there's a lot of guys like, me growing up, if I caught a fish, I caught a fish. Yeah, I didn't have pictures of it and stuff. And that was another big learning curve for me starting my own business. Is I was having to, everybody had all these pictures of fish, and like, well, I've caught a lot of these. I just don't have pictures. We didn't have camera phones and stuff.
Yeah, no kidding.
So that's been a learning curve, but it's been a really good. Every year's busier and busier. I've been very, very blessed to have a great support system. My wife is my biggest fan.
That helps.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I have that support at home, and Austin back there behind the camera, guides like him. We have a great group of guides in the area, and we all we help each other out when need be, and so it's been good.
Tell me a little bit about casts and drafts. Tell me a little bit about what it is, how it got started, and what your goal is with that.
So it's
a cool name, casts and drafts. I got to say that's a good one.
Yeah, that's what we are. It's beer and fly fishing. The two biggies in life, really. No, so myself and a couple guides, we got together and we all kind of had the same complaints on. A lot of people are. Charleston has exploded in population. A lot of people are coming here that have, like yourself, they have a lot of experience fishing trout and out west, or just freshwater in general.
Yep.
And they want to learn saltwater. I'm a firm believer as a guide. I have been put in a situation where not everybody can do it, where I make my living on the water. So the knowledge and stuff that I have, I need to pay it forward and to give other people that knowledge. Not saying that we give out fishing spots, but if someone's doing something wrong and I'm getting upset with them, you don't know any better.
You're not giving out fishing spots, but you're giving out knowledge to help people figure out where they can find their own fishing spots.
Yes. Yep.
And having moved here from out west a little over a year ago, and having, for the past 20 years almost, all I've ever fly fished for was trout. and I will say, and I'm going to catch hell for this, is that saltwater fly fishing is a lot harder for a lot of different reasons. It's more, the casting is harder, a lot more emphasis on the cast. I think finding the fish is harder. So I can tell you from that perspective, I appreciate what you're doing. But yeah, I mean, you've had it. So you get together on is it bi-monthly basis?
Yep. So it's every other month. It's a totally free event. We have an FFI casting instructor that's there, helping out. It's myself, 2 other guides that we also are there helping out, trying to help casting. If you're interested in boats, we have a bunch of different boats on display, skiffs.
Local vendors.
Yep, local vendors. We have some local fly tires, explaining fly tying material. We have the guys with Focus Fly Fishing. They've been great. You go up to them and talk to them for 5 minutes. They're going to have you behind the vise, showing you something super cool. So I think it's more of knowledge sharing.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome because, like I said, I think it's a little bit intimidating trying to learn how to saltwater fly fish, and I think typically guides could be a little bit closed about wanting to share their resource, I guess.
Yep.
Traditionally. So I think it's great that you're trying to do it in the right way. Open it up and make it less intimidating for people like myself or anyone that's new to saltwater fly fishing to not, to crack that door open and welcome people in and try to, share knowledge. Like you said, not share spots, but share knowledge of like, hey, here's how you can find your own spots, and here's how you can, if you want to get into this sport, here's how you start taking the first steps. And I think that's huge for a lot of people like myself who are just starting out.
Yep.
Learning how to saltwater fly fish, because it is it is completely different than fly fishing out west. You're basically learning it all over again, as the way I see it. I mean, I've had to relearn how to cast, relearn how to find these fish. I mean, it's all completely different. So it really is like learning it all over again.
Yeah, there's a big learning curve with it, and and fly fishing has grown tremendously.
Yeah.
Again, like when I was a kid growing up, I think it was me and my one buddy that we were the only ones that were fly fishing. That was kind of like the old guy thing. And we're getting a lot of the younger crowd coming through. I mean, we have some people that are in high school, and their goal, they want to be fly fishing guides when they grow up.
Cool.
And I think it's
not quite that easy, but
no. And but we have people there to give them pointers. If you have questions, we're here to ask. Again, like we try to make it as much as open door as possible. Everyone's really friendly. There's no cliques.
Well, and I think there's 2 ways to approach it, right? And the bottom line is, no matter what, you're not going to stop people moving here. You're not going to stop people wanting to learn how to fly fish. You're not going to stop wanting people to fly fish in the saltwater. So instead of just being grumpy about it and being pissed off about all these new people being here and messing up your fishery, which you tend to get that vibe from some people. I think it's, in my opinion, the course you guys are taking is the better way to do it. I mean, if these people are going to come, you might as well educate them so they're treating the resource the right way and, not hurting the redfish population or anything else they're fishing for. So, I mean, I think it's better to, in my opinion, like I said, to sort of do it, where you have a little bit more of a welcoming, posture towards it, and educate them so they're doing it the right way.
Yep. And like what you said too, saltwater fly fishing, we're like ice fishermen, like it's
I
such
never
a
thought of it that way. It's
small
true.
group of people,
Yeah.
And why be standoffish and be cliquish when everybody is bringing some kind of experience from wherever they come from, and there's not a right, wrong way. The only way that us, like, as guides, we can do is like, this is the best way to do it to be able to catch another fish again. And, and we can show proper ways for fish handling and catch and release and that sort of thing. But, at the end of the day, everybody has their own experiences to share, and there's always somebody to learn from.
And I think, like, you and I are both volunteers with Project Healing Waters Fly Fishing, which is an organization that works with wounded veterans, disabled veterans, to teach them how to, fly fish and tie flies and build rods and basically everything about fly fishing. And I think, we tend to want to find for lack of a better term, a tribe or a group of friends to hang out with.
Yeah.
And for me moving here, it's like I want to meet that new group of friends or make new friends. And, you want to do that within the fly fishing community. So if you come and it's all closed off, that's not so good. I mean, It's hard to make friends that way. But going back to Project Healing Waters, a lot of what you and I have discussed and we've seen with these guys is, people who are struggling find some healing in getting into fly fishing or getting into some other outdoor pursuit. And you and I have talked about that. What do you, in your experience of what you've seen in your time as a guide and just in general, how have you seen like fly fishing or just basically people spending time in the outdoors help them with the, challenges that they're going through?
I don't think I've seen it hurt them and, in any kind of way. I think people take for granted where they live, and how, somewhere like Charleston, how easy you could go and find water. I mean, I think I'm one of those people. I think water is a natural healer, and finding that peace. Being on the bow of a boat during getting pushed around, doesn't matter if you're on a main shoreline or on a flood flat. You find that peace, and if you are struggling with something mentally, I think fly fishing is a great way to where you keep your mind busy. If you need just a break from, if you're struggling with something, it's a great way to focus on something else, even for a short period of time. Maybe an hour or two at a time, but you're at least giving yourself, you're teaching yourself a way to manage that by just focusing on something else.
Yeah, and I think for what I've heard a lot of people say is it gives them that when you are leaving the military, or if you are struggling with something like, let's say, mental health or whatever it may be, even a drug addiction or something, one of the biggest things that helps people is finding a new community to connect with. And I think that whatever that community is, for us, it's fly fishing or fishing in general, or it could be hunting, it could be backpacking, it could be whatever it is, mountain climbing, mountaineering, whatever. But getting involved and getting out and started in that community, number one, it gives them a new group to connect with. And I think that's important. Like even like, there's all these studies now where they're finding like, and it's a lot of it's adult males, they're more lonely than ever. And like adult males are having more, a lack of connecting and getting out and spending time. And I think for veterans or anyone that's struggling, that's a big part of it, is getting involved in that community. Like I said, for us, it's fishing, but anything where you can start connecting with another group of people, get out of away from whatever you've been dealing with and just talk to people.
Yeah.
And then just, again, spending time in the outdoors is, like you said, it's just healing.
Yep. I like to say that the bow of the boat is the most honest place in the world. You can talk yourself up and be the best angler in the world, but it's all going to show when you get on the bow of that boat. And a lot of people I've found that once maybe they are going into it and they don't want to be honest about their fishing ability or something like that. They get on the bow of the boat and they do start having a hard time with, say, a double haul in the wind. And, you start kind of giving them critiques, and they're, okay, well, this guy, I can trust this guy, I can talk to him. And then they'll start opening up with just something small like that. And, I mean, before you know it, I've met some great friends now that they got on the boat for a 4-hour trip as a client, and they left as we were texting, and I have some really close friends like that now. So it is amazing how it does build.
And I don't think, it's in an odd way, you're almost, that time spent and that on the boat, like you said, when you're out on the boat, it's just you and the person on the bow.
Mm-hmm.
And you learn a lot about somebody when you spend a day out, all day on the water with them. And I think that time of, even that time out on the boat, you know, I know when I go out and I spend a day, you know, the times I've gone out with Austin or the times I've gone out with a couple other people around here, is that just being able to go out and talk to somebody else itself is healing. I mean, You just feel better at the end of that day. So, I mean, I think that's why it's important. You know, the message that with this podcast we're trying to get across is that, you know, try to take those first steps to find that interest and then get involved with that community and get out there and just, number one, you connect with other people. Number two, like you said, it's for fly fishing, you know, if you get into just learning how to cast and tying flies and all these other things, it gives you another purpose, for lack of a better, you know, way of saying it. You know, it's a challenge to overcome, and that itself is healing to stay busy.
Yep. And, you know, it can be a standoffish community, but for that small group of people that is standoffish, there's a huge group of people that are, I mean, just open arms, more than happy to help. And, you know, I have nothing bad to say about the community as a whole. You know, it's people, I've seen people that are just total strangers to each other that will hop on the boat and fish with each other just because it's, you know, like, oh, hey, we fish in the same spot. My boat's broken. Oh, I need somebody to fish on the bow. And, you know, it's just amazing how it's a fly rod is what brings those people together to do that.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about fly fishing.
Do you have you gone out with, I know that you've taken some of the Healing Waters guys out fly fishing, and how did that go with those guys?
Good. Again, I love talking to people. Everybody, as I've said, everybody has different experiences and backgrounds, and, you know, there's no telling who I'm going to have on the bow of the boat. So it was good. It's the Healing Waters here. You know, it's every branch. Everybody has, I mean, I think everything from this SF community to, you know, transports, and, you know, it's so broad, and that's what I love about it. So it's a great community here. I enjoy every time I get them on the boat. Yeah.
We're going to try to get them out a little more into the saltwater. We were talking about that a little earlier. And I think that, again, with the casts and drafts and what you guys are doing with that, that's pretty welcoming too. And maybe we could, you know, get with some of the local chapter here and throw an invite out to them and get them out to that as well. Well, I mean, that's mostly what we wanted to talk about. Is there anything you wanted to add before we wrap it up?
No, I think anybody that is struggling, don't be afraid to talk about it. You know, that's kind of like step one, is just reach out, talk about it. And I think you'd be surprised how many people are more than happy to help you.
Yeah, I agree. Well, again, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. And we'll talk again soon.
Yep. Thanks for the invite.
All right.